was in my 7th year of college. That's right, 7, working on a bachelor's degree. And a friend of mine told me about his first college class. It was Philosophy 101. And he said, I need to tell you about my first class. I said, why is that? He said, you've been in college for a long time. So he had my attention. He said, it was Philosophy 101. And I walked into my class just like all the other freshmen. And I sat down in the center of the class, and all these young freshmen were filing in. And it was probably their first college class as well. And before the professor ever speaks a word of his lecture, he peers over the top of his glasses and he looks at all these young students and he says, I've been teaching this class a long time. He said, I know exactly what's going to happen as we proceed through the semester. He says, some of you will move to the front of the room. You'll get involved in my lectures. You'll do the readings that I assign. And he said, you're going to get more out of this class than just a grade. He says, some of you are here because someone has told you that you have to take Philosophy 101 in order to graduate from college. He said, you're here with a high school mentality. You're here because you think somebody's making you be here. He says, I'm going to make a deal with you. You can do whatever you want while you're in my class. You can sit in the back. You can read a book. You can listen to music. You can even sleep. And he says, if you show up for my class every single day, I will guarantee you a C. And about that time, somebody raised their hand and says, excuse me, sir. You mean all I got to do is show up? You're going to give me a C? And the professor says, yeah, that's right. Someone else raised their hand and says, sir, what is the catch? And the professor says, there is no catch. He says, you and I live in one of the most abundant countries in the world. He said, we have tons of opportunities for tons of people. In a place like this, you can pretty much just show up and just get by. If all you want to do is survive, you're going to be okay. You're going to survive. Question is, when I think about this, and that was the thing that motivated me, is I didn't want to live in survival. I wanted to have a career and a job that mattered. I didn't want to just get by. I didn't want to just survive, but I wanted to learn to thrive in this world. And I think that ties so perfectly to education. See, it really just comes down to this one concept, and maybe you've heard the concept before. I hope you have. I've spent the past 30 years sharing with students all over the country. The word is Yogowipi, Y-O-G-O-W-Y-P-I. It's an 8-letter acronym. Each letter stands for a word. You probably figured it out already because it's written on the screen. It means you only get out what you put in. If you want to get a lot out of what we're doing, and I know you're sitting in front of your computer, you got to put a lot in. In fact, you only get out what you put in. Folks, I love the live seminar. I love working with teachers. I love working with educators. Today's program is called The Essentials of Engagement. It's essentially 30 years worth of stuff, things that I've boiled down to. These are the things that you absolutely need to do to engage students. I'm going to be sharing these concepts with you. I'm going to ask that you engage. I'm going to ask that you have an open mind. I'm going to ask that you put a lot in. I'm going to ask that you come from a perspective of not just to get through this, but to get some stuff, to get some ideas that's going to help you be a little bit better as an educator. First concept that I want to share with you, which is an essential of engagement. I use it in all my live seminars, all my live programs, whether I'm working with teachers or whether I'm working with administrators or whether I'm working with students or college students. It says create movement to check for engagement. Movement is an essential part of the classroom. Educators, you know about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. One thing is certain, when we are engaged in something, we're seeing stuff, we're hearing stuff, and we're involved. I always create movement to check for engagement almost initially. One of the very first things that I do in my keynote is I say the name of the game is focus. The object of the game is to do whatever it takes to stay focused. In a moment, I'm going to put up my hands. You're going to put up your hands with me. We're going to see if you have the ability to stay focused, and clap your hands whenever I do. I do that activity because I want to look across the room and I want to see who's in and who's not. Not because I'm going to call somebody on the carpet for it, just so that I can be aware of where my room is and what level of participation that I'm dealing with. I always do things in my seminars to constantly create movement so that I can check for engagement. It might be having them turn and talk to the person next to them. It might be doing a call and response. It might be asking them to raise their hand. It might be asking them to stand up and find a new seat. I'm always creating movement. And while I'm doing that, I'm hyper aware about what's going on in the room. Educators, it's an essential of engagement. create movement, be big, be bold, check for engagement in your classrooms. Create movement to check for engagement. Another essential engagement that I use with my students, whether it's a workshop or a keynote, is understanding the idea is that growth equals energy plus time. I use this one for a twofold reason. Number one, if I am going to grow as a speaker or as a presenter or as an educator, number one, I got to put in the energy and I got to put in the time. And I use it because to encourage people to put in the energy and to put in the time. My son and I, we both share this passion of golfing. In fact, I want to golf in all 50 states. And my son shares that same passion. And we're always talking about what states we want to golf in next. We were getting ready to go on a multi-state trip where we're going to get in the truck and we're going to drive to all these different golf courses so that we could play. And he's like, Dad, when are we going to leave? I'm like, dude, we're leaving tomorrow. Tomorrow gets here. Dad, we're going to leave this afternoon. Dad, when are we going to leave? I said, we're leaving now. And he looked at me and he said, it's about time. You ever been greeted that way? You know, like when you show up late and somebody's like, about time you showed up. or maybe somebody's coming in and you're like, it's about time you got here. And my son, he said, Dad, it's about time. And I went, yeah, I know it's about time. No, Dad, this trip is about time. And when he said it, I heard it from a whole different perspective. And my mind kind of blew up a little bit. He's like, Dad, this trip is about time. It's about you and I being together. It's about being on the golf course. It's about talking smart. It's about having fun. It's about creating memories. He said all the stuff to me that I've been saying to him for years. And he said, it's about time. And I'm like, dude, it is right. It is about time. And I want you to think about this as an educator. One of the essentials of engagement is challenging your people to put in the energy and also challenge them to put in the time. There are two types of energies that we can provide in the classroom, both as an educator, as a student. One is the willing energy. It's like, I showed up today, I put on pants, and I'm ready, I'm willing. And then there's this eager energy, which says, I showed up today, and not only am I here, but I'm here to improve the quality of my lives. One of the things I've learned, educators, is where we are, they are. And if we're asking them to be engaged, we better be engaged. If we're asking them to risk, we better risk. Growth equals energy plus time. The other one is the eagerness. Eagerness is, some people live their life going, do I have to? That's kind of a willing approach. And then there are others who say, I don't have to do anything. I'm a born chooser. I get to do this. Have to, get to. Willing, eager. It's not a big difference in terms of effort, educators, but it's a huge difference in terms of results. I learned a long time as a former classroom teacher, teaching at 99% is a bear, but at 100%, it is a breeze. I want you to take a moment. You're gonna stop and you're gonna write some things down. I want you to pretend that you can put down on paper the qualities of the perfect student. And when you do, when you put down those qualities, those students are going to appear in your classroom. Qualities of the perfect student. Stop the video, make a list, 10, 15, 20 qualities. If you're eager in your approach, 20 qualities of the perfect student. If you get them on there, they're real. They'll show up. Ready? And stop the video. Do it now. I hope you stopped the video. I hope you wrote down the qualities of the perfect student. I ask this question a lot, and I always get things like to show up, to be prepared, to listen, to be engaged, to be fun to be around, to take the lessons seriously, to do their homework, to laugh, to have a sense of humor while they're in the classroom, to bring their personality to the classroom, to be ready to learn, to bring an eager sense of participation, to be focused, to be supportive of the people around them. Look at that list. Think about the things that I just said. If I were to ask your students, what are the qualities of the perfect teacher? What would the list look like? It would probably look like they're eager, they're fun, they're excited, they're engaged, They bring their personality to the classroom. They have a sense of humor. They have a playful approach in the way they're doing things. They cooperate with the people around them. See, folks, their list is probably the same as your list. One of the things I learned a long time about education, folks, is this: we can't get what we're not eager to give. If we're going to get to that place as an educator, we got to be eager to give what we want. Growth equals energy plus time. We can't get what we're not eager to give. If we are going to get those things, we got to put in the energy. We got to put in the time. There's no shortcutting the educational system. G equals E plus T is an essential of engagement if we're going to make a difference in the quality of our students' lives. I always say this is important as an educator, is we got to bring the energy to the classroom. I mean, you know, you've had those teachers who showed up and like, oh man, not another Monday. You can't bring that teacher. You can't bring that kind of energy to your classroom. If you're excited about your subject, then have that show. They're going to think you're goofy. They're going to think you're silly. They're going to think you're strange, but it's okay because they're going to remember you. And your job as an educator is to create memories. So like if I would have started this session and said, I'm really excited to be here with Essentials of Engagement, you would have been like, man, I'm not going to be able to watch this for 15 minutes. So you got to bring the energy. You gotta have a sense of a tonality in your voice that says you're excited to be there. The second part of bring the energy, and it's a two-part concept on the Essentials of Engagements, is don't go over the top. Because if I would have started this session like, woo, you would have been like, dude, I can't watch 15 minutes of this. Too much is not good. Not enough is not good. As an educator, here's a key essential of engagement: read the room. You got to read the room. You got to bring in enough energy so they'll come up to your level, but not so much that you push them away. Bring the energy, but don't go over the top. It's an essential of engagement if you're going to engage students in the classroom. The Essentials of Engagement workshop that we're going through right now is actually a 3-hour to even a 6-hour workshop that I do with teachers and educators over the course of a day as part of a teacher in-service program. And I knew that I wanted to be between 15 and 20 minutes. And just now, whenever I looked down and I was doing some editing, I was like, oh my goodness, wow, we're already at 13 minutes and I haven't covered near the stuff. So I just want to get right to what I think is one of the most important essentials. Although there are many others, this one is so important, and it's learning to tell stories. This model that's up on your screen is the storytelling model. I didn't create it. In fact, I learned it from my English teacher way back in like 1980. And but it's still, and then I added a little bit to it, noticing what I do as a speaker to tell stories. Because how it happened was, when I was writing my book, Uncle Walt, my because I call him Mr. Forbes, my English teacher, he taught us how to tell stories and how to do all this stuff. And then I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I do to tell stories. I didn't realize that I was doing it, but that's exactly what I do whenever I tell a story. But the one thing that I do that he didn't teach is at the very end, which I'll talk about. So the first part of the storytelling process, and I challenge you to look at this, just look as a number one, you got to set the scene. And when you set the scene, just set the scene and introduce the characters. I think I maybe told 2 or 3 stories during this segment. And what I want you to notice is that all I did was I stepped into the story. Folks, educators, there is so much power in being in mid-story. So much power. Man, when you are in mid-story, there is just something powerful about it. And the way you do is you set the scene. The worst way to do it, and I'm going to tell you this, never, ever do this. Never start a story by saying, I'm going to tell you a story. Don't do that. Would you rather hear, I'm going to tell you a story about a dark, stormy night, or this? It was a dark, stormy night. See, that's setting the scene. One of the stories that I told today was, I said, um, in my 7th year of college, right? So all the way right there, I set the scene. I introduced the characters to you. And as a friend of mine and the college professor, I did a little acting in there. You know, the professor looked over the top of his glasses and peers across the students. So you set the scene and you introduce the character. And one of the things you got to understand about it, any story is that the character, the lead character, is going to go from what's comfortable to be uncomfortable, whether it's Star Wars or Bilbo Baggins. The journey begins. They go from what they know to what they don't know. And as a result of from going from what they know to what they don't know, there's going to be a realized conflict. Usually it's an internal struggle. I'm not enough. I don't have what it takes. I have lots of fear. I'm not very confident in who I am. The cowardly lion needed courage, and the scarecrow wanted a brain. There's a obstacle is realized, and then at some point the obstacle is resolved, and that's when Hollywood ends the story. But as educators, that's where we work to create the lesson. At the end of Star Wars, you know, you got Chewbacca and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia at the very, very end of Star Wars #1, which is #4, going, and they get medals, and that's the end of the story. But for educators, there's a teachable moment. And if you'll notice that I did that in both the stories that I told. I taught the lesson. I used a teachable moment with the story about Easton. He said, Dad, it's about time. I'm like, yeah, Dad, dude, I get it. It's about time. No, Dad, it's about time. And when he said it to me, my mind blew up. It's about time, you and I being together. It's about time. See, that little thing is called the phrase that pays. That's what your students, that's what they're going to remember. That's what's going to be the callback. That's what allows you to use that lesson from the story over and over again. I know this is an abbreviated version of storytelling. I know that this is an abbreviated version of the storytelling, but I just wanted to give you a sense of it, and so that you'd understand. So that's a taste. The taste of the essentials of engagement. I hope there's some nuggets in there that you can use to make your classroom a little more playful, a little bit more joyful. Is that you create movement to check for engagement while you're in the classroom. Is that you're always creating opportunities to move for your students, and that you grow, that you understand that growth equals energy plus time. If you're going to grow as an educator, you got to put in the energy plus the time, and that it is about time. And, you know, understand the power of a story. Power, man, it's just so powerful when you're right there in your mid stories and your students are sitting there and they're going, what's next? That's how you create those teachable moments. You've got that in you. You've got it in you. All you got to do is look. You got to look for the stories of your life. Look for the stories and then do the phrase that pays. If we were in a live seminar, we would workshop some of your stories, but we don't have that capability right now. So what I'm going to tell you to do is get a journal and start creating a repertoire of stories, those stories that have a phrase that pays. Then look into your life and go, what are the cool things that have happened, or even the not cool things that have happened to me? And what stories that can I tell, and how can I use those stories to bring forth lessons that have a phrase that pays that goes with it, so the students will remember the lesson. It's just a few essentials of engagement, folks. And thanks for spending some time with me. Thanks for engaging. Thanks for staying all the way through it. I appreciate you. I love what you do. And remember, whether you're on the computer screen creating a virtual environment, or you get to be live in front of students, always remember, it's about time.